All right, so picture this, a world where mathematics isn't just a subject you learn in school, it's the very fabric of reality itself. A world where history isn't just written down, it's a living equation that's still being calculated. Today, we are diving deep into the epic history of Concord, a world literally solved into existence.
To really wrap our heads around Concord, we have to go way, way back to the beginning. And this is not your typical creation story. It's a tale of cosmic sacrifice, of impossible logic, and, well, it's about an infinite, unresolved chaos that's always lurking just beneath the surface of everything.
You see, the story of Concord doesn't start with a big bang or some grand explosion. It starts with a void, a profound silence. And out of that silence, a single perfect idea came into being that would change everything.
Before existence, there was only the zero void. And I don't just mean emptiness. Think of it more like pure, silent potential. A blank canvas, just waiting for the very first number to be written on it.
And then, from that absolute nothing, a concept of pure unity just appeared. The prime glyph of 1, the first whole number, a perfect singular existence that represented wholeness itself.
But here's the twist. In what would become the single most important act of creation, 1 made a choice. It chose to break its own perfection, to divide itself, all to bring a complex, beautiful world into being.
Now, this single act had two huge, completely opposite consequences. First, it birthed the mother fractions, the fundamental building blocks of reality. Think halves, thirds, tenths, the principles of order and harmony. But at the exact same time, it unleashed something else, a chaotic, endless calculation, an infinite leftover, a remainder.
And this thing, became known as calculus prime. And it's not a monster with claws and fangs, okay? It's a living mathematical principle. It's a wound in reality itself. Imagine trying to solve a math problem that just keeps going, and going, and going, spiraling closer and closer to an answer it can never, ever reach. That's calculus prime.
So, to protect their brand new world, the mother fractions had to make the ultimate sacrifice. They gave up their own perfect wholeness, weaving their power together to create a great seal, the severance seal. This trapped calculus prime away in a pocket dimension called the fractured expanse, buying the world a fragile peace. But, a seal, by its very nature, can always be broken.
So with the big, scary math monster locked away, the world could finally breathe. Life started to flourish, and over thousands of years, civilizations began to form, eventually coming together as 4 distinct tribes, each one shaped by one of the primal powers of math.
But for a long time, these tribes kept to themselves, each practicing their own unique kind of math magic. And that was a huge problem. Because when their different logics would clash, they would create these catastrophic events called fractal storms. Literal tempests of clashing equations that would just rip the world apart.
And each tribe's entire way of life was built around their core power. You had the Adari, masters of addition, who were all about community and growth. The Vetrasai used subtraction, finding truth by stripping away the unnecessary. The Multitari were ambitious, seeing exponential power in multiplication. And the Divinary, who mastered division, believed everything from knowledge to resources had to be shared.
They figured out pretty quick that their separation was going to literally unmake their entire world. So they came together in this historic event called the First Spiral Accord, and they chose to unite. They forged a new civilization, they called it Concord, where their 4 powers could finally create harmony instead of chaos. And their tribes became the 4 great houses we know today.
But just because they were united, well, that didn't mean the fighting stopped. Not at all. It just changed the battlefield, from a fight for survival against nature to calculated wars over ideology.
Concord would end up facing 2 absolutely devastating wars that shaped its very soul. The first was the Proof Seal Wars, a bitter internal civil war between the houses over whose math was the true math. The second, the Decimal War, was totally different. It was a fight for survival against an outside force, the machine-like Orderbound, who had this cold, rigid logic based entirely on decimals.
So, the Proof Seal Wars, they were brought to this sudden, shocking end by the appearance of a timeless, paradoxical figure. No one knows where he came from. He's known only as Mr. Anderson. The histories don't agree on much about him, but they all agree on one thing. He seems to exist outside of time itself. He didn't win through brute force. No.
He was way smarter than that. He just effortlessly countered each house's magic with its mathematical opposite. So when House Fireheart used multiplication to create a massive inferno, he used division to scatter it into nothing. He showed them that their powers were all just part of one single, balanced equation. And he ended a generation of war in a single day.
For ages after that, Concord had peace. Well, a tense peace, maybe. They were always aware of that infinite threat, locked away by the mother's sacrifice, living in its shadow.
But very recently, that peace was shattered. Not by an enemy from the outside, not by another war between the houses. No, this time it was broken by an act of betrayal from one of their very own.
One name. That's all it took to bring everything crashing down. Varnock. This guy was a celebrated hero, a trusted friend to the leaders of all the houses. He was one of them, and he chose to undo the one foundational sacrifice that held the entire world together.
He shattered the Severance Seal, ripping it apart and letting Calculus Prime, the infinite remainder, bleed back into reality. And now it's starting to warp the land, its creatures, the very laws of math that hold everything together are starting to fray.
And so the living equation of Concord's history has been thrown into complete chaos. An act of division created the world, and now another act of division threatens to unmake it. The future of Concord is an unsolved problem. The question is, who's going to be the one to find the answer?